For today's review, we are looking at Raven from the Titans build wave, and before I talk about the accessories and the figure, let's take a quick look at the data profile card. As you can see, there is this beautiful comic book artwork of Raven, and one thing to note here that is interesting is the fact that the source material that they used for the card is not the same depiction of the character that we get in figure form. So, as you can see, her costume is completely different from what is depicted in this artwork. And this is not the first time they've done something like this, but whenever they do, it's pretty strange. I don't know why they do this. So there's that whole thing. And also, if you know where this depiction of Raven originates from, let me know in the comments below. It would be much appreciated. And for the backside of the card, you do have your usual read-up for who the character is. Her real name is Rachel Roth, and it reads, born Rachel Roth to a human mother and a demonic father, Raven's entire life has been a balancing act between the light and the darkness. Unwilling to succumb to her demonic heritage, she's trained tirelessly to control and master her emotions, study the mystical arts, and become a hero, despite whatever destiny the demonic magic in her blood had intended for her. But demons are not so easily abated, and the persistent threat of her father constantly looms over her and whatever team of heroes she's been a part of. And that's a pretty good read-up on who this character is. And now let's move on to the accessories that are included with this figure. And she does come with these two effect parts, as you can see right here. And they are like in the form of flames, and they're in translucent pink colors. So that's nice. Now, how do you equip these to the actual figure? So you have to pop the hands off, and then you can put these on. And I will show what they look like equipped to the figure later in the video. And I will also point out why I'm not a fan of the way that they did this, because you will see what I mean. So those are the two accessories. And in terms of the build pieces, she does come with the right hand and the left hand for Beast Boy, as well as the head sculpt. So 3 pieces of the build figure. And that is pretty much all you get in this box. The build pieces, the effect parts, the figure, the DC figure stand, of course, right? Which I don't ever count as an accessory. That's always included. And lastly, the card that we just talked about. And let's move on to the aesthetics of this figure. Looking at the design of this version of Raven, I think they did a pretty good job with the overall sculpting of this figure. Now, of course, since I've never seen the actual source material for where this design of Raven originates from, I can't tell you what's accurate and what is inaccurate. So for this aesthetics portion, I'm only going to focus on the sculpted details that I think they did a good job with, and take it from there. So let's start with the middle area right here. As you can see, this is what holds her cape together. I like the fact that this is an actual sculpted piece right here, and there is texturing in the blue areas. It may look like just like flat blue paint, but if you look closely at it, which my camera is not showing, there is texturing details that are similar to what you see with the dark blue areas of her cape and her hoodie. So I like the fact that those texturing details are there. And of course, the middle area right here, you do have the circle with the red and the gold colors painted to it. And for her torso area of the costume, you can see that there are some sculpted lines separating the blue and the black areas of her costume. And it does give this sort of like modernized feel to superhero costumes, because you know, there's a lot of those sort of design elements that you see a lot these days, right? With these sort of like grid-like patterns and stuff. It's interesting how this has basically become a standard with most of these superhero costumes these days. And for the belt area, you can see that there are these circle designs just like up here, and they're all sculpted nicely. And it does go all the way to the back, as you can see. So they didn't half-ass it, because sometimes they do with these belts where they go to like the sides and then they don't fill out the back part, which that doesn't make any sense to me at all why they do that, but they have done it before. So as you can see, it does wrap all the way around to the backside. Now, sadly, when it comes to the backside of her costume, there is no other colors. It's just pretty much all flat here, which is unfortunate. They could have, you know, allowed the blue areas up here to kind of like wrap around to the back parts, which is really strange how that doesn't even, you know, happen, right? Like, look at how the blue just stops in the middle right here. It just looks really weird how it doesn't go all the way around. So that's strange. And now let's move on to the cape. As you can see, there is texturing details, which is really nice because ever since they started using this sort of design element back in the day when they applied this to most of their figures, it really did make it feel like real cloth, even though it is a soft PVC plastic cape. Really nice that there's texturing there. And of course, there's texturing inside as well, which is a little bit different from what you see on the outside, right? So the cape is done nicely. And then for her legs, it's the same color from the upper thigh to the lower part of her legs, and even the shoes are the same color. But if you are a customizer and you do customize your action figures, this is definitely something you can probably change, right? Because a little bit of contrast would make the design here look a little bit better. And then going to the hands, you got the fist hand and you got the item holding hand. Oh, that's not an item holding hand. That's like an angry gesture hand, you know? It's like she's about to grab something. Yeah. So that's what that hand gesture is. And also for the arms, there's not a whole lot of details either with the costume design here. Like there's no blue parts, which they could have done right here, right? They could have given her some gauntlets or something. I don't know. They could have done something, right? To kind of break it up a little bit. So that is pretty much most of the design of her costume. And now let's take a look at that face sculpt, which is interesting because I have never seen this character rock red color hair before. And I wish the hoodie, I can pull it back, but I can't. And her eyes are, of course, glowing purple because she's using her powers, right? That's why she has these effect parts. So that's awesome. And she does have black lipstick for her, you know, her lips right there, because if you know anything about Raven, she's pretty much very goth-like in terms of her personality, so this all makes sense why she looks the way she does. And that is pretty much the aesthetics for the figure. Let's move on to the articulation now. Starting with the head sculpt, she does have limited range of motion similar to Donna Troy. However, they did do something interesting here. So you would think that the hoodie that she's wearing is connected to her cape and it's one entire piece so that her head sculpt can barely move. Well, they at least made it a separate piece, as you can see right here. So she can actually rotate her head, which is great because having this rotation is better than not having any sort of movement. And I'm glad that they actually did something like this because it actually works in this sense. Now, the other cool thing is that this hoodie is not glued onto her head sculpt. So technically, the head can also rotate on its own without having to rotate this way. But because my copy of the figure is really stiff, I'm going to try to loosen the stiffness of her head sculpt so I can get to work and try to show it in the next review when we talk about Arsenal, because I do want to show that it works. And this is the only time that they ever did this, because if you look at like the other figures that have hoodies, they don't have this sort of cut or anything, right? It's just like one entire piece that's connected to them. And then their only range of motion is literally just the head sculpt looking left and right. And that's pretty much it. Now, in terms of the head sculpt, you know, looking up and down, you're not going to get any of that tilting. That's not going to work. So that's what I mean by limited range of motion. Now let's move on to her arms. She can swing them up this high. She can swing them to the side this much. She has bicep swivel, double jointed, as well as swivel in the hands and wrist articulation. As you can see right there, it works. So those are the arms. Let's move on to the torso. She does have rotation up here, which is nice. It does work. Leaning forward, kinda. Leaning back, not too bad. And then for her waist, there is rotation down here that is also moving nicely. Leaning forward a little bit, leaning back a little bit. So the articulation for the torso is decent, I suppose. And then for her legs, does she have thigh swivel? No, they don't move. That's unfortunate. Can she do the splits? Well, that's a pretty good split right there, actually. Wow. Well, there you go. She can do the splits. Can she kick forward? Yes, she can, and that's a pretty good kick right there. She also has double jointed in her legs, as well as rotation in the feet, articulation, and toe articulation as well. And that is all the articulation for Raven. So the first thing that you want to do is you're going to pop off these hands. And I'm going to pop off the fist hand first. And it can be a little bit tricky because sometimes I think they are kind of a pain in the ass to actually equip. So there is the first one. And you got to kind of just like rotate it until you hear a click, which I'm not hearing. Is it not going in? Okay, that one is not going in. Are they correlated to something? Let's see. Is it this side? Okay, there we go. That went in for this arm. Let's try this one right here. Well, that popped off really easily. And then do the same thing on this arm. Come on, go in. Or are you not going in? Okay, there we go. Let's just do something like this. So as you can see, this is what she looks like with these effect pieces, right? You had to take her hands off of her arms just to put these on. And it looks really freaking weird because they could have done this in a different way where her hands are still visible. I think the execution is a little bit off here because it just looks really strange, right? It looks like she doesn't even have hands anymore. And also, this is the other thing I wanted to point out. Because it is made out of this translucent plastic material, you can see that the peg for her hands is visible. Look at that. It's right there. It looks so bad. Like, if you're going to do something like this, at least make the peg like translucent pink as well to match with the effect parts. I don't know why they did it this way, but it's not effective. And, you know, I don't have her pose with these because they just look really freaking ridiculous. So this is why these effect pieces, in my opinion, they're cool, but the execution is just really bad here, as you can see. I almost forgot to mention this. So there is kind of a semi-fix to the solution, but it does require you to have the Mcfarlane Nezuko figure in your collection. And if you don't have that figure, then, you know, don't bother with this because don't waste your money on something that you don't want. So that figure came with these two additional hands that are sculpted with the energy blasts in her fingers, right? Like literally blasting something out. And it looks more realistic when those are equipped to the figure than this whole thing right here, right? I actually took one of those hands and, you know, put it onto the peg joint here, and it actually worked. It connected, and it actually stayed on tightly, I suppose. But it was also a pain in the ass to actually remove, so you do want to be careful because I don't think they're supposed to work together. But if you can take those hand effect parts thing, whatever they're called, and put it onto a Raven here, you can get her to look like she's blasting somebody with her powers. Now, I'll remind you this, the colors of the energy effects are a little bit more on the brighter pink instead of this sort of color, but it is a solution if you want to pose her on the shelf with that over this monstrosity here. So, yeah, that is the solution that I'm proposing here if you want to do that. All right, let's move on to the comparison now. And I'm going to put her right here and just keep these effect parts on her arms. For this first comparison, here she is next to Starfire, and I think the two of them look good together on the shelf, and this was one of those duels that I wanted to complete ever since I got this figure back in 2023. I was always hoping that they would get to Starfire, and I'm glad they did. And let's move on to the next figure. Here she is next to Donna Troy. And as you can see, Donna Troy is taller than her, just like what I said in the review for Donna Troy. She is taller than most of them. Actually, is she taller than Starfire? Oh yeah, she is taller than Starfire, just making sure. I already forgot. So there's that comparison. And here she is next to Nightwing. And for the last comparison, here she is next to Beast Boy. And as you can see, Beast Boy towers over all of them. And Arsenal, I will have in the comparisons in the next video with all these characters, okay? I just haven't gotten the figure out. So that is going to be it for the comparisons for today's review. And if you found today's review of Raven informative, do give this video a like. If you want to subscribe to the channel for more action figure content and whatever else I do on here, it would be much appreciated. And with that said, take care, and I will see you in the next video.